So, in general, I don't know who else is on this. You can get there's an app you can get. It's called Sifri. How you spell it again, David?
It's
S
Safari, SEFARIA with a big summit.
Right, so Safari. You can get it on your phone, and I'm talking to other people. I don't know, Julia Phillips and Little Broadway. Not sure who you are, or so you can get the app, and over there you can get the Gemara, the Talmud, or you have a Talmud with you. So we're gonna what time is it? It's 8:01. Let's give another minute. What?
Sorry. What's the number in the letter? 8B?
8B. But I don't know if over there it is 8B. And we're looking for Tanur Rabbanon Eved. The slave, if a slave brings an Eved and a slave, that's what we're looking. You found it over there?
Yeah, 8B I see.
Okay, we're going to start the Gemara. There's a fascinating Gemara in Gemarah Gittin. We're holding an 8B2 in the Art Scroll. And the Gemara over here it deals with the law of documents. The law of documentation, because the concept of a document, that you need a document in the Torah, is we learn it all from the concept of a get. We know that you have to have a ksuba, for example, in the Torah. The law that you have to have a ksuba in the Torah is, you know it from a divorce. It says v'kosav law. The Torah says openly, when it comes to a divorce, it says v'kosav law, and you shall write for her a document. V'kosav sefer shlichus, and you shall write for her a document of divorce. So we know that when it comes to divorce, you need to have a document. From that pasuk of the Torah, we know that we need to have other documents, other kind of documents in Jewish law. So we have an interesting law concerning the documentation of an Eved. An Eved Kanani, a slave. In the Jewish law, there's a concept of slave. You buy a slave. It's no more, thank God, we have slavery. But there was a concept of a slave in Jewish law. There was a Jewish slave, and there was a slave that was bought for non-Jews, called the Eved Kanani. The difference was that an a Jewish slave was only it was slavery for 6 years, right? The 7th year you have to let him out. A non-Jewish slave was slave forever until he was freed. And you need to give him a document. You need to give him a document of freedom in Jewish law, right? Thank God again, we don't have this concept of slavery anymore, Baruch Hashem. Okay, but there was a time in history that there was a concept of slavery, and there was an aspect of slavery in Jewish law too. So the Gemara now, but here the Gemara doesn't go into slavery. That's not the concept of the Gemara here. The Gemara over here is going to go into the concept of a very interesting aspect in Jewish law of dividing separating a statement. Can we take a statement of somebody and can we separate the statement? Because the statement might work out in one aspect of law and it might not work in a second concept of law. Can we divide a statement from a person? It's called pagimin diburai. Do we say, since half of the statement works in the law, so we'll take half of the statement, but the other half of the statement doesn't work in the law? We'll divide the statement in half. We'll use a statement that works, and we won't use a statement that doesn't work. So this is a fascinating concept. So let's learn the Gemara. We'll learn the Gemara. That's really what the Gemara is talking about. The Gemara is talking about slavery. That's not the issue in the Gemara. The Gemara over here the issue is about this concept of dividing his statement. Yeah, you got it? You with me? Tanur Rabbanan, the rabbis learned Evet shehevi getoi. If a slave brings his document from a different part of the world, from out of Israel, he brings it to Israel as document, right? And v'kasaba, and it's written in the document. The guy came to Israel. Not only does he have a document that he's free, he has in a document that he owns all this property. He came loaded with possessions. We say, what are you doing over here? Who are you? Oh, I was a slave in whatever, in a different part of the world. And here's my document. I'm free. Decided to move to Israel, and I have all this property. I want it to be mine. It's mine. It's my property. It was given to me. Eved, so Tanabon, Rabbi Eved, if a guy of a slave brings an emancipation document that he's free. Because of it, and in this document it's written, Atzmacha, you unachasai, and all my possession, Kenuyalach. The master loved him so much that he gave him all his possessions. So now we know when it comes to a divorce, if it comes from America with such a document, and in it it's written that that you're free, you can go marry whoever you want, right? So we accept the document from the woman. The woman says it was written in front of me. We accept her statement, right? So do we accept the servant statement? So we'll accept the servant statement. But do we accept the servant statement concerning the physical possessions? Do we accept? So the Gemara says, Atzmik knuyala nechasim leikanim. So the Gemara says, yes, he can acquire himself, but he cannot acquire the possessions. We need two witnesses that he should acquire the possessions. You got that? So we're gonna split. We're gonna in essence split his statement. We're gonna accept half and not accept the other half. We're gonna accept his statement concerning himself, but we're not gonna accept his statement concerning the possessions. We'll say, who said the possessions belong to you? We need two witnesses that prove that this guy let you free, and he not the one of the two witnesses that prove that he let you free. We need the two witnesses that say that in front of us, this guy said, "All my possessions is yours." Until then, we're not sure the possessions is yours. We can't accept your testimony. Okay.
Okay.
So the Gemara asks the question: what happens if we had the guy comes with a document and it says, not that he is free and all my possessions belong to you. What happens if the guy comes with a document and the document says, Kol nechasei knuyalach, all my possessions belong to you. He just didn't write about himself. He said, a guy comes to court. He says, listen, Yankel, the slave, we're talking about a slave. A slave comes to court. He says, Yankel freed me. And now I am the sole owner of all his possessions. Why? Because I have a document. The document is written, all my possessions belong to you. Now the thing is, they ask him, how do we know that you're free? He says, what do you mean? All my possessions belong to me. I was part of his possessions. So he gave me as part of his possessions. I'm part of his possessions, right? I was his slave. So now that he wrote in the document, all my possessions belong to you, I'm part of his possessions. What do you do about that? What is going to be the law about how you can't split the word? Because it doesn't say you should be free and your possessions. It says all your possessions belong to you. That made me free. Because I'm his possession and now I belong to myself. Mahu, what would be the law in such a case? That's a trick. That's a. You have to start today. You have to start using your Gemarah cup. Amar Abaye said, "Mitosh kana atmei." Since he acquired himself, kana nechasim, he acquired all the possessions. So that's like a kinyan in Jewish law. We acquire something through an acquirement of something else. Once you acquire A, everything that's in A everything that's next to A, everything that's on top of A is acquired. So same thing over here. Once the guy acquired himself, he acquired everything. That's what Abaye says. In this case, this would be the law. Amalei Rava, so Rava asked the question, it makes sense that a guy should acquire himself. You know why? Why does a guy acquire? Why do we say an Eved can acquire himself? Because you learn it from a divorced woman. You don't accept. Nobody can say testimony about himself. Even a divorced woman that comes with a document and says, "In front of me it was written, in front of me is signed." Why do we accept her testimony? It's about herself. She's bringing a get, not about somebody else. She's bringing a get about herself. So now she says this divorce document is valid. You're what's called in the Gemarah negei bedava. You can't say testimony in Jewish law on yourself. I know it's different in civil law that a person can testify about himself. In Jewish law, a person cannot testify about himself. You need to have two witnesses. So how do we say by a divorcee that she can bring a document saying that this is a get? The only reason why we accept it because the Rabbanan allowed it by a get to allow such a statement. Because since we have a document that has two witnesses, and we accept her testimony because we want to be lenient in these cases. and we learn that a slave is compared to a divorced woman, and will accept the testimony of a slave, even though why would you accept testimony of any slave? We need to have witnesses, right? So Rava says, it makes sense that a guy should acquire himself. He should like a comparable to a woman's divorce. But why would you allow him to acquire the property? Let the guy not acquire the possessions. Like any other document that comes. Any other document. If I'm holding a document, I have to have witnesses that prove the document. I can't just say a document. How do I know that that's a true document? Oh, I promise you it's a true document. I can't say if the document is written about me, I cannot take testimony on a document that's written about me. So the Rava says you're not really. The Rava says it's not correct. How can you compare the concept of possessions to the aspect of a woman acquiring herself to freedom, and an Eved acquiring himself to freedom? We'll give him his freedom because we have compassion to him to give him his freedom, and we'll be lenient in the law. But why would we give a person? Why would we give him monetary issues that without witnesses? So Abaye said, you're right. So Abaye says, you know what? I'm going to go back. Abaye says, you know what? Since he doesn't acquire his possession, he doesn't acquire himself either. In this case, I would hold that since it's one statement, you should acquire all my possessions. Since you don't acquire the possessions, you don't acquire yourself either. So Rava said, Rava, wait a second, why are you going so far? I didn't say that. I said a person shouldn't acquire possessions like any other document value that talks about possessions, need witnesses. But a person himself, the slave himself should be free. Like we accept a woman's testimony on a divorce. So Rava says, I don't agree with either one of your statements. Either way you're going to go, where you're going, I don't agree with you. Yeah, you with me? So therefore Rava says, in both cases, I hold Atzmei kana nechasim leikana. In both cases, whether it says you are free and I'm giving you all my property, or he said I give you hereby all my property, the slave goes free. The property does not belong to him until we validate this document. Okay, so Rava hopefully argues and holds that you divide. In essence, Rava says we're dividing the statement. We're accepting a statement on a document halfway and not the other half. Or let's say it's one big statement, everything belongs to you. We're gonna divide the statement. We're gonna say the statement concerning himself we accept, the statement concerning possessions we don't accept without witnesses. That's called, in the Gemarah terminology, it's palgina de bure. We divide his words. We accept half those words and not the other half. This is a very deep not philosophical, but deep core concept in the Jewish law of palgin the Buddha. It's an interesting concept to be able to divide a person. We accept half his words. Now, if you accepted this, why would you accept everything? No. We're only accepting your words concerning yourself, not concerning monetary value. We're holding 8b3. So Rav Ada Manasseh said to Rava, Keman, who are you? Whose opinion are you following? Kirab Shimon. You are ruling according to Rab Shimon. Because there's a machlekes about this. There's a general argument, not over here, but in different Gemara. There's a whole argument. Can you divide a person's words? Do you divide a person's words? Should you divide a person's words? Either you accept it all or you don't accept it at all. But there's a machlekes. Because Rab Shimon says, Palginin de Buddha, that you do divide a person's words. You divide it and you accept half of it, you don't have to accept it entirely. It's not, we learned in the Mishnah. HaKosev kol nechasav liyadei. If somebody writes all his possessions to his slave, he liked his slave so much, he gave him all his possessions. Now in Jewish law, a slave does not inherit. A child inherits. So he, before he died, wrote all his possessions and he gave it to his slave. Yotza ben Chayrim. He goes out free. He goes out free. The Gemara over here doesn't talk about the possessions. The Gemara is talking here about his freedom. He goes out free. What happens if he wrote, I give all my possessions, but, puts a but my piece of property in Tel Aviv. That piece of property I'm not giving my slave. I'm leaving that piece of property to my son Yankel. The second he said those words, the second he wrote those words, I'm leaving my piece of property to somebody else. The Mishnah, this Rameir says, it doesn't go free. You with me?
So what happens?
He doesn't go free. The second he said, besides this piece of property, someplace else, he doesn't go free.
Wow.
This is the words of the Tana, which is Rameir. This is the word, I believe it's Amir. This is the words of the Tana. L'yotzav ben chayrin. It doesn't go out free. Why? Because he didn't say I freed a slave. He said, I am giving all my property to my slave. Besides this piece of property. So he left a possession that is not given to the slave. The second he said that, he in essence put the property and the slave in the same category. So look at the bottom. You don't have the bottom. I'll read you the bottom 27. Since the master never stated explicitly that he's freeing the slave, meaning he wrote all your possession and my possession, your possession, my possession, we assume that by retaining some property, the master shows that he intended to retain the slave as well. Because he never spoke about the freedom of the slave. So the master, in essence, maybe wrote a tricky document. We're not sure the master is dead now. So maybe the master didn't want to give away the slave. How do you know the master's intentions? We don't know. The master's not alive. Rabbi Shimon disagrees. Rabbi Shimon says, "La'olam hu ben chayrin." That he does go free in this case. We're going to split we're going to split Pagin the Buddha. We're going to split the words in half. Unless he writes in the document, Kol nechasei nesun leploni. All my possessions are hereby given to so and so, my slave, except for one part in 10,000. He didn't write that piece of land. He wrote it except one part. Every part could be the slave. Because the slave is the master. So if the guy writes, I am giving you have your freedom. Oh, you're right, I'm giving you all my possessions, besides that piece of land or whatever, that car, then he goes free. But if he writes, I'm giving you everything but a part, didn't say which part it was, 1/10 of my possession is not yours? Every part, who says that 1/10 is not him? So here Rava says, the Mishnah says, and the Gemarah says that the Rava goes according to Rab Shimon. Rava goes according to Rab Shimon. That Rava holds that you can divide the word is like Rab Shimon, who holds you can divide the word as long as it's not tricky words. As long as you didn't say that, I'm giving you entirely yours besides 1%.
Interesting.
So now the Gemara says, but we have a statement Rabbi Yosef Menucha said the name Rab Nachman. Even though Rabbi Yossi praised Rab Shimon's teaching, he said, halacha k'Rabmeir. The halacha is nevertheless like Rabbi, who says you don't divide the words. That we keep the words together. In Tanya, we learned in a Braisa, when this argument was said in front of Rabbi Yossi, he said on Rab Shimon the following verse: "So sayim yishchak meishe devarim nachechem, lips shall kiss he that responds with the correct opinion. So it's a verse of Proverbs. It's Evan Rabbi Yossi is applying this verse to Rab Shimon, not Rameir, because the verse states responds, and it's Rab Shimon who responds to Rameir. So Rameir said, with the Tana said, you don't divide the words, and the guy's not free. Comes up, and Rab Shimon says, you do divide the words. Comes Rabbi Yossi and says, you're a wonderful guy, but the law is like Rameir, that we don't divide the words. So now the question is, why would Rava go according to Rab Shimon if the halacha, the law is like Rameir? So the Gemara has to answer this. So the Gemara says, "Mi Amar Rab Nachman Achi." The Rab Nachman ever say such a thing? Amar Rabbi Yossi bar Munya Amar Rab Nachman. We have another statement of Rab Nachman in the name of Rabbi Yossi bar Munya. You ready? Another different law. This is a law of a shchivmerah. It's a very interesting law in Jewish law. The concept of a shivmerah. A shchivmerah means a person that's laying, God forbid, on his deathbed. There's a concept in Jewish law, tzavah shchivmerah, that if a person, God forbid, laying on his deathbed, and he tells you do A, B, C, D, we follow his statements, even though there's no documentation. Tzavah shchimera. It's the tzavah, the will and testament of a dying person.
If it's not written.
Right, it's not written, but we have two witnesses who says that on his deathbed he said, give $100,000 to Yankel, so that's a tzavah shchimera. Even though we don't have a document that says Yankel should get this $100,000. The question is, a guy's on his deathbed, God forbid, and he says something, and then he gets healthy again. He has a miraculous recovery. Can he change his mind? On a document, you can't change your mind. Right? Something's written in a document. I saw a document. I want to give Yankel $100,000 and there's two witnesses on it. I have to accept it. But what happens over here, no documentation. Right? Yankel was on his deathbed, God forbid. And he said, I want to give Shmero $100,000. He got well again. He says, you know what? Okay, that was what I said when I was on my deathbed. I changed my mind. I don't like Shmerel that much. Actually, over here, I'm sorry. So he wrote it. He said to write it. I'm sorry. Let's take it back. He wrote it. Va'amad, and he recovered. He thought he's going to die. So he said, I'm giving all my possessions to my slave. In essence, he's freeing him. Right?
Right.
So this is the question. The question over here is deeper. I'm going to take back what I said, that if you write a document. Because over here is that he wrote a document in the time of his death situation. He was in a death. He was sick, very sick. And he'd ask. He wrote a document in that time, in a time when he was very sick. Today, I'm not sure, any lawyer. In civil law, you have the same thing. A person. We have the competence of the person that said that wrote the document. Right? Oh, we can fight in court. He was deathly ill. He was incapacitated. He was senile, etc. Right? We have these concepts in legal law. So let's over here. You have a seriously ill person, a serious deathly ill person, who wrote all his possessions to his slave. Right? We read before that if a guy writes all the possessions to his slave, to some, the guy is free and he gets all the possessions, right?
Right.
But this guy is not only the document, we know that he was deathly ill. But over here the situation is va'amad, and he recovered. He had a miraculous recovery, thank God. So Chayzer, va'amad Chayzer ben Achasim, he can retract the gift of the possessions. Ve'in Chayzer be'eved. But he cannot retract in the slavery. We free him. He's free. Why? Now you're separating, you're dividing the document. Why do we say a guy can retract in the possessions? It's a gift of a seriously ill person. Right? Why do we accept the statement of a seriously ill person? Why would we accept a statement of a seriously ill person in general? In essence, the guy feels he's going to die, so he's giving away his money. He doesn't want that the money should be, he doesn't want that other people should deal, even his children should do with what they want with his money. He decides, I'm dying anyway, I'm going to give Yankel my money. I want to give Yankel my money. I like him. I want to give my slave my money. I like him. Then he gets healthy. He says, I'm sorry. I thought I was going to die. I'm not dead. I want the money. Hello, I'm alive. So I wanted the money myself. I didn't die. The only reason why I wanted to give you the money is because I thought I'm not going to have, I don't need the money anyway. I'm not taking the money there. I'm not taking the money to heaven. Right? So what do I need the money? So that's why you accept the wording of a Gemarah, because he's dying anyway. So he wants to give away his money. The second he gets up, he says, listen, it was a matana. I wanted to give you my money if I was alive. I didn't want to give you money when I was alive. I wanted the money myself. But when it comes to so why can I not change his mind in the aspect of slavery? Why can't he not change his mind? Say, listen, I wanted to free you because I was going to die. No, he could change. I can't change his mind, but now I want you back as a slave. Because the problem is that once he was freed, the word got out that he's free, and to make him back a slave is not correct. It's not the right thing to do. Since everybody has found out that Shmerel, the slave of Yaakov, was free, now we don't want to. Even though the guy got healthy again, and really you could say, wait a second, I didn't want to really give you your freedom. I want to give you your freedom because I was going to die anyway. So therefore, we don't retract the slavery. We don't retract in the slavery, but we retract in the money. So we see openly, Rav Nachman holds, you divide the words. So we see openly, Rav Nachman holds, we divide the words of somebody. That we divide his words concerning the money to the concerning the giving the guy his freedom. So Rav Nachman openly, you see what you mean? Rav Nachman holds like Rameh, we don't divide the words. Rav Nachman openly says that we do divide the words. Elam Rav Ashi, so therefore Rav Ashi says that no, Rav Nachman holds you don't divide the words. Hasam Hanataimer, the reason why Rav Nachman says this ruling, Mishum de Lav Krisis Kidkaras Gito, because the severance of the bond between the master, because the Mishum de Lav Krisis Gito, because that the severance of the bond between the master and the slave implied by the document is not sufficiently clear. That's the problem. The problem is that since Rameir's reasons is not related to the issue of dividing the statement, but there is no contradiction to Rav Nachman's ruling in halacha, follows Rameir and Rav Nachman's own ruling in the statement dividable. Likewise, Rava's ruling that the statement is dividable is not contradiction to Rameir. So, in essence, since it's unclear, Rav Nachman holds, not because I agree that maybe you could divide, but the problem is in this statement over here, it's very unclear to what he wanted to do. And that's why Rav Nachman will hold like Rav Meir. And that's how we end the subject. So really, we didn't come to a conclusion, really. Do we divide the statement or don't we divide the statement? Therefore, Rava can still hold like that we, in general, we would divide the statement unless it's unclear. It's not a clear situation. Should we divide a statement or not? So the Gemarah continues and says, the Mishnah says, Im yashalav eiridin yiskayim b'chaisma. If there is a contest to the get, there's somebody contesting this get, then you have to validate the get. No get that comes even with witnesses is we accept only if there's no somebody contesting. That's what they're contesting. Somebody that is challenging the get. So the Gemarah says, Irakama, how many people are challenging this get? If you're going to say that there was only one guy that is contesting this get, some guy came and said, hello, this get is not a good get. Some guy stood up. Rabbi Yechanan said, Divri hakel ein irapachas b'shnayim. To contest something, you need two guys to contest something. You can't have one guy contesting something. You need two guys to contest something. Va'ela today. So there must have been that two guys came and said that the get that has two witnesses is an invalid get. If that's a true, you have two against two. You have two guys that are signed that it is a get. You have two guys that is screaming, it's not a get. Why do you believe the guys that are written in the get? Samachani, trust the guys that are written why do you believe the guys that came forward? Trust the guys that are written in the get. So who is contesting it? Ella iru debal. The Gemara ends off and says, we're talking not about two guys came to contest the get. What? We're worried about the husband. The husband. The husband's going to come and say it's an invalid get. And therefore, anytime we're worried about the husband is going to come and say that's invalid get, so the husband's greater than one guy because it's talking about him and his wife. And therefore, the best thing is that we validate this get that has two witnesses. And once we validate a get that has two witnesses, now, even if the husband comes and says, this is something written about me, and you're going to give over something that's written about me, and how can you give over something written about me when I say that somebody false in this get? We accept the validate. Once we have validated the get, no husband can come and say whatever he wants to say. It's not accepted. Okay, we finished. We're holding 9a2. We finished one Mishnah, and we're going into a whole new Mishnah. The Mishnah says, "Maybe get mimdina sayam, one who brings a get from abroad to Eretz Israel." So the Mishnah really continues the previous Mishnah that talks about somebody who brings a divorce document from America to Israel. He has to say "B'fanei nechtam" or "B'fanei nechtam." It was written and signed in front of me, right? So the Mishnah says that maybe get mimdina sayam. Somebody brings a get from an agent. And he can't say. Well, the Mishnah, the Gemarah will explain why he can't say. He can't say whatever. Right now, let's leave it like this. He cannot say for whatever reason. He just can't say it. If there's witnesses on this document, right? Hopefully there are witnesses on the document. You have to validate the document. You have to validate the witnesses. Now, in general, even till today, where they send gets from place to place. Let's say there's a concept. The guy, the wife is in Florida, and the husband's in New York, right? So what they do is they write a get in New York, they send it to Florida, and send it to a rabbi in Florida, and the rabbi in Florida gives the get over to the wife. Now, how does the rabbi in Florida know that you see the rabbi in Florida gets the get? He looks at the get, beautiful get, written good, and there's 2 signatures on it. The rabbi in Florida doesn't know the signatures. How does he validate? How do you validate signatures? So when you go to the notary public, the guy he asks you for your license, with officially your signatures there, and he validates your signature, right? How do we validate signatures of a document that was written in New York? Today we do that. We validate a document. I know how we do it. We have the witnesses sign another 2 documents. They sign it. They sign the name once or twice, right? So now the get comes over here to Florida. I see the get. I see the signatures, and I see 2 other documents, and I validate the signatures. I see the commonality in the signatures. So I validate the signatures by seeing 2 other signatures. Right? Just like a notary public validates because he sees your. So today even they might even send the driver's license, whatever. So, how do you validate who's who? Picture the driver's license, great. So we validate. So the Bezdin over here in Florida validates the witnesses on the documents. Once again, we invalidate the witnesses. So that's the same thing the way they did in that time. Yiskayim b'chaismav. We find documents that have these 2 witnesses on it, and we validate. Now, you see in Gittin, in general, it's difficult the Gittin is harder to write than a ksuba, because it needs a sofer, and usually it needs a sofer, and we need 2 witnesses there. So usually you need a court, rabbi. So usually the sofer and the witnesses are all the same. The rabbi, the sofer, and the witness. Like in Florida, there's 2 places to do gets, like in Boca. There's a Bezdin in Boca, and there's a Bezdin in Miami that does gets. Actually, there's one in North Miami too. I don't know if they do that. I don't know if Rabbi Leofield's involved in gets. But usually we sent Rabbi Leofield. Rabbi Leofield had a sofer, and it was always the same sofer, Rabbi Salma. And there was always the same witnesses, a year, get. These 2 guys were always there usually. So you always can find a get given by Rabbi Leofield with the same witnesses. You always can find other gets. You'll validate the signature. You with me? So you validate the signatures. And now the get is acceptable get. That's the validation of signatures. Validations of witnesses. That's the Mishnah. Yiskayim b'chaisma. It should be confirmed through its signatures. The most important thing is the witnesses. The most important thing in a marriage is the witnesses. The most important things in divorce is the witnesses. Divorce self-insert is harder. Because always there might be a challenge. Usually in a marriage you don't have challenges that much. Oh, you didn't marry me. Usually when it comes to divorce, we have a bigger problem. That's why when it comes to divorce, we need to make sure that it's done correctly and everybody's on board. And nobody's going to come say later, I didn't mean it. I didn't. It was under duress. It was not true, etc. What?
Yeah. Implications are worse. Yeah.
Implications are worse, right? And then the implications are worse because then if they get married, and now imagine she gets married, and the husband comes and says, "I never, I don't know what they're talking about. I never wrote it. I never said to write again, etc." You know, you can do that. You know, jealousy, etc. So Yiskayim b'chaismav. You need to do this. You need to validate, confirm it through the signatures. That's the way you do it. Confirm it through the signatures. Go find another 2 documents for each of these witnesses, and you'll see. You'll validate its signatures. You'll validate it, and now the husband or anybody can say whatever they want. Now the Mishnah continues. The Mishnah is going back to the previous Gemarah a little bit, which talks about avodim, slaves. Okay? Echad Gittin Nashim ve'echad Shchuri Avodim. Both Gittin and freedom of slavery documents, Shava l'meilch l'mevi, has the same regarding to the bringing it to Israel and going from Israel. They both have equal laws. V'zu achas min adrachim, these are one of the ways sheshavu gittin noshim l'shchuri avarim, which gittin of a woman is the same as the freedom of a slave. The documentation. Again, the Gemara is talking about documentation. Gemarah is not talking about, I don't want to get into the laws of slavery. That's not the Gemarah here. That's not what the Gemarah. The Gemarah over here is talking about the concept of documentation. Danny, are you trying to say something? Danny, I can't see.
No, I'm just getting to the page.
Oh, we're holding 982. Danny, it's a pleasure to see. I don't see you, but it's a pleasure to hear you. We're holding 982. The new Mishnah. We just started the new Mishnah.
Mm-hmm.
So Gemarah says, holding the Gemarah now. What is the meaning that he can't say? What can't say what? Why somebody threatened him? What does it mean that he can't say? If he's saying that he's deaf, he's a deaf and mute person, God forbid. Cheresh barasuyi gitu is a deaf and mute person can be an agent. But now we learned in another Mishnah, Hakol kshein leibus to get all can bring a get chutz mecheres shoyte v'gatan. So we know the Mishnah says, another Mishnah says that they cannot bring a get. They cannot be a witness. Cheres shoyte v'gatan. Now again, God forbid, we're not. Some people take this Mishnah in general, Cheres shoyte v'gatan, and we're putting them in the same category. And that's not true. The Mishnah just says that each one of these entities have a concept that they cannot be a witness. Not that the Cheres shoyte v'gatan are God forbid equal. We could consider a person that's deaf and dumb that he's a shoyte, he's a fool. No, it can be a normal person, but he has a deficiency to be a witness because he cannot hear and cannot speak. So how can he say a person that witnesses something needs to be able to hear the thing that happened, not only see, but to be able to hear and be able to say it. Al pishnayim edim. See, it's a Torah law that the Torah says al pishnayim. We don't accept the writing of a witness. The witness has to say it with his mouth. Because that's the pasuk. That's the pasuk. So the pasuk says, Al pishnayim edim, on the mouth of a witness. So the witness has to say it. That's one of the reasons why the court had to know all languages. Because they had to be able to hear the testimony of all. If a guy from France came and said testimony, they needed to know French. Because he couldn't write it. They couldn't have a translator because that's not on the testimony of the witness. So they need to know. Gemarah says that, especially when it came to life and death issues, the Bezdin needed to know They needed to know all the 60, 70 languages because they needed to hear the testimony from the mouth of a witness. And if they didn't hear testimony from the mouth of a witness in the pasuk, they wouldn't be accepted. Right? Now, shaita, it's the same thing as the concept of a fool, so you can't accept that. We understand the guy might not have seen it correctly. And a katan in general, is not accepted in Jewish law for any punishment or ramifications in Jewish law. So if he cannot be punished himself, he cannot bring punishment on somebody else. God forbid, because he's not punishable himself. Okay, so the Gemarah says, so how are you going to answer the Mishnah? The Mishnah says that a cheresh the guy's a cheresh. Right? The Mishnah said, maybe get in front of yachal. Why can't he? Because he's a cheresh. So if he's a cheresh, he couldn't bring it to begin with. So that when he left America, he could have spoke. And suddenly, he lost his voice. Not lost his voice like laryngitis. He couldn't speak for a week. He could have lost his voice. He suddenly became deaf and dumb.
Well, why don't we say that
Yeah.
he can't make the declaration because he didn't see it signed before him? Like if he really didn't see it signed, does that mean that the get cannot be confirmed? Like even if you can confirm the signatures, it's still no good?
That's a good question. That's a good question. Okay, very good question. So, that's a good question. That's a good question.
I mean, Rob Yosef...
Did I invite you to the class? That's a good question. Why could we say that it wasn't done? A good question.
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
maybe Rob Yosef thinks that if he didn't see it signed, then it
Okay.
doesn't matter if you confirm the signatures, it's still no good.
Right.
That could be what Rob Yosef thinks.
Good question. We'll have to. The truth is, let me see. There's no dash in it. It's a good question.
I thought we learned some of that with the...
I know. I thought we learned it before already, and I don't remember what was the answer. So it slips my mind.
All right, we'll have to go review.
Oh, we'll have to go back to that. Okay, we'll come. Good question. So Gemara answers. So he gave it to him while he was a talking person. But was not before he had a chance to say it. He became deaf, and he could not say it anymore. So therefore, the Mishnah says Yiskayim b'chaismav. You should validate it by its witnesses. So the Gemara continues and says, the Mishnah says, the Gemara, the Mishnah wants to now connect the documents of divorce to the documents of freedom, emancipation, freedom. So the Gemara brings down a argument. Rabbis learned in 3 ways. In 3 ways. The Mishnah doesn't say 3 ways. It says this is one of the ways. The Mishnah doesn't say how many ways. Comes this Mishnah and says that the rabbis learned that there are 3 ways. What is the 3 ways? They are compared to when you bring to Eretz Yisrael or you go out from Eretz Yisrael, you have to testify to the validation of the document. Another 2, the chol get sheyeshel of 8 kusi, if a get has a non-Jewish Akutin witness, 8 kusi, he's invalid. Chutz me Gittin noshim v'shchuri avarim. Besides a woman's get and a slave's get. So a Kutin, see the bottom, number 26, the Kutin Samaritans were a group of people from a different lands, including Kuta, brought by King Assyrian to populate the parts of Israel left vacant in the exile of the 10 tribes. Initially, the Kutins did not fear God, so God sent lions to kill them. When the Assyrian king heard this, he arranged for the Kutins to be taught God's law. They learned to fear God, and the danger passed. But they continued to worship idols. This is a whole different subject, the concept of a kuti, because they were God-fearing people, as we just said, but they were still idol worshippers. There's a dispute among Tanoim as whenever a kuti subsequently converted to Judaism is in a valid matter. Even amongst those who maintain that eventually they did convert, some consider them unfit for many functions in Jewish law. This is because they did not accept rabbinical interpretation of the Torah, and thus could not be relied upon to fulfill the commandments correctly. This Braisa follows the view that they did not convert. Yet it rules that the Kutin cannot be used as a witness to a document because they cannot be relied on to give truthful testimony. The Gemarah below.
An idolater and a non-idolater, they might side with the idolater, right?
Right. So that's why the difference between a kuti and an idolater in Jewish law, as we'll soon see. I mean, so there's the idolater, and there's a kuti. A kuti, in essence there was a general argument: can we accept these kutins? Can we accept this group of people who are seemingly religious people on one hand, or some of them even converted, became Jews, but some of them didn't, etc. So it's this whole argument. So the Gemara over here says that every document which there is a signature of a Kutin witness invalid, besides a get. We're going to accept it. We're going to accept it for a woman to have a Kuti witness.
Or slave.
Or a slave. That means that we're going to be more lenient. In general, you see that the Gemara was more lenient by getting, even though they were very strict by gets, Don Lishma, but things that were not obligated in the Torah. That's why we have a general argument before if witnesses are obligated to be on a get, right?
Right.
So therefore, some hold that it's only a rabbinical thing that witnesses need to be on a get. It doesn't say that in the Torah. It says because of law, right, or a get. We didn't say the Torah have witnesses. Some hold that you not have witnesses, right? Could be you don't have witnesses. So it could be the rabbi's issues when it came to a get, many times they were more lenient because they wanted that it should be easier for the woman to get this get and have less, only to leave what the Torah obligated, not to have other things, right? And all gets, all documents, that were preceded by the courts of idolaters, even if the witnesses who signed them were idolaters, kshedim are valid. That means documentation of idolaters accepted in the money documentation. If a guy went to a non-Jewish court, even idolaters, and it was
like a deed.
What?
A star is like a deed.
Deed, right? Money sale, right?
Yeah.
If it was done by idolaters court, we're going to accept it. Chutz megitei nashim v'shchurei avodim. But besides a get cannot come from a goyish court, an idolatrous court, or have not idolatrous signatures. And shchurei avodim, and also freedom of slaves. It needs to be by a Jewish court and Jewish witnesses. So these are the three things that we learned that a get is like a free thing that you have to say before nechta. You have to say it was written and signed. Number two is that you can have a kuti. Number three is it can be written by guy. Ukedivid, yeah. So the Gemara continues. Ukedivid Rameir Barba, and according to the opinion of Meir, we have a fourth thing. What is the fourth thing? Get zuli ishti. If a guy says, give this get, he says to somebody else, give this get to my wife. V'shtar shichu zel avdi. and give this document of emancipation to my slave. Now they didn't give it yet. The agent didn't give it yet. If before it was given, he wants to change his mind, he can change his mind. Divid Ameya. These are the words of Ameya. That means the Chachamim, there are those who disagree with that. That he cannot change his mind. Once he gave it to the agent, and he said, I want you to give this get, and now he wants to change his mind, he can't change his mind. That's why today we're gonna when we do Eidim Mesida, when we do this concept of giving it over through a third party. I said a guy from New York is getting divorced. His wife is in Florida. We're gonna make sure that the guy signs that he knows that he cannot change his mind from hence and forward. Once it's signed, even though the woman is not going to get it, who knows, in a couple of days or even a couple of weeks, until they're going to get it in Florida, until they're going to set up the Bezdin, until they're going to actually give it to her. But he cannot change his mind.
Because we don't hold like Rabbi Meir.
Correct. Right, because we don't hold like Rabbi Meir. Right. But we want to make sure, because even Rabbi Meir, that's what we want to make sure. So he says it in front of the Bezdin, he says in front of witnesses that I cannot change my mind. That I won't change my mind, and I cannot change my mind. But a Pasha over here, in this case of Ameir and Rabbanan, he didn't say such a thing anyway. So the question was, he didn't say it. So he said, I want to change my mind. I never said I'm not going to change my mind. So I want to change my mind. So we have this concept. So Rab Meir, you have the fourth thing. But according to Rabbanan, you don't have the fourth thing, right? So Bishlam and Rabbanan, why do you say three things? Minyana lemuti hadar Meir. The minyana, the amount comes to say 3 and not 4. We don't agree with Rab Meir, so there's no fourth thing. El Rab Meir minyana lemuti mai. But according to Rab Meir, what is the number? Why did it say? What is the number comes to exclude?
Okay, see, because Rabbi Meir didn't argue specifically with his Mishnah.
Right. So what is the number? Why do you say a number?
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's right, because Rabbi Meir said 4 things. Why did he have to say 4?
Right.
What else is there? No, what else is there?
Correct.
What are they all excluding?
What else are they excluding?
That's right. I was wondering the same thing.
So the Gemara answered, Lemuti on the Tanya, they learned that the Meir says that Tanya is excluding as follows. Eidim she'ena yeidu l'cha'achtaim. If you have witnesses to a document that do not know how to sign their names. Why would you pick such a witness? I don't know, but you have these witnesses that can't sign the names. They don't know how to sign the names. It's interesting because
they were socially distancing, and these are the only guys that cleaned the house.
Before you write a ksuba, many rabbis make the witnesses write their names down on a separate piece of paper.
Yeah.
He wants to make sure they know how to sign the names, because you have to in Jewish law. It's not like sign like a Zalman book it. I have to write the signature in Jewish law is Shnei Zalman ben Chaim Meir. So I have to write my name and my father's name, Ben, the son of my father. That's a signature. So you have
write a little.
No, you can't. It's right. I have to write my name, Shnei Zalman, the son of Chaim Meir, Aid. And we had Aid. Chaim Meir, Shnei Zalman, Chaim Meir, Aid. So you have to know how to write that. I did not write it. Imagine you don't know how to write in Hebrew. So a lot of times you have witnesses that can't write Hebrew. It's a big problem. A lot of times the witnesses, even the writing, you can't read the names. So it's not like you can't. You have to be able to read the names. That's why you'll see under the chuppah sometimes the guy is looking at the ksuba, can't read the name because the guy can't write. So if the guy can't write, it's hard to read his name. So you have to be able to read the name. It's not like a signature name. You have to read the name. You have to read the name. So you have to know how to write your name in Hebrew. You have to know how to write your father's name in Hebrew. So if witnesses to a document do not know how to sign the names, we etch their names for them. So that what do? We have no other witnesses. We need them, right? So what do? So the rabbi goes. The rabbi can't sign the name for them. The rabbi goes and he etches out the name. He takes a piece of metal and he etches out their name for them on another piece of paper, and they fill in the names. So we etch their names for them on a blank parchment, and the witnesses fill the etchings with black ink. So we help them with the signature, right?
You make an outline, and they just color in the line.
That's it. What should we do? The guys don't know how to sign the names. They don't know how to write Hebrew. So what do? Listen, trust me. In those days, most of the people didn't know how to write Hebrew. They didn't know Hebrew. That's why there was Aramaic, because a lot of people didn't know Hebrew. So we have these two witnesses, and we need them. We can't find somebody else, so we did that. That's what we did that. So that's what we did. Rab Shimon Gamliel. So Rab Shimon Gamliel said, "Amed v'amurim b'gittin nashim." When do we do that? When this is important is only by a get. We're going to make sure to have witnesses. We're going to go crazy and start, we start scratching out things to have some witness fill out the names. But when it comes to even freeing slaves and other documents, if they know how to read and to sign, let them sign. If they don't know how to sign, let them not sign.
Well, it's interesting because the get is the one thing that doesn't even need a signature.
Right, but we're afraid of either Habal.
Yeah,
we're afraid of the either Habal, and therefore, even though we don't need signatures, we want to make sure it does have a signature, because we know that a get is an emotional thing, and one day the Baal is going to come and say it's not true. Just to hurt his wife, and maybe his wife remarried, and now they have children, and he wants to hurt her, etc. So we're going to make sure that happens, because we want to protect it. So in essence, we can have witnesses to a situation that don't sign a name. They don't have to sign a name. They're still witnesses. Right? You have in a marriage, you have two witnesses under the chuppah. They don't sign any document. They're witnesses to a situation. Mm-hmm. You don't have... So they can be witnesses to this document without signing it. They can still be witnesses. Right? They come later and say, we witnessed this document. We're witnesses to the document. Where's the signature? We didn't sign it. We can't sign.
You got it right.
What? We're dumbbells. We can't sign. We don't know how to sign. So it doesn't make us unwitnesses because we can't sign. You know, even the famous guy who used to sign his name with an X. He couldn't sign his name. So he put an X, whatever. That was his signature, X. So that's... So the Gemarah says... What?
The thing is, the get Nashim, it doesn't even really need signatures.
Right.
So the fact that they didn't Monish sign it because they don't know how, doesn't matter. It's just identify them anyway.
Correct. But get is better.
It still works there.
Right.
Yeah.
What do you mean anything about reading? Who ever mentioned reading? The Abba Gamliel says, if they know how to read and to sign. Who's talking about reading? Reading what? What's different? We never mentioned reading. So what does it over here? Why does it mention over here the word reading?
Well, what mentions reading?
In the previous statement, if they know how to read and how to sign, let them read it. Let them good. If not, they don't have to read and sign. Who's mentioning reading over here? We never mentioned our Mishnah reading. So the Gemarah says you're right. Suri Mechse it is missing these words. This is what the Mishnah said. If you have witnesses that don't know how to read, we read for them, and we read it for them. If they don't have to sign, we etch out for them. This is very interesting, because trust me, when you take a ksuba where we have witnesses signing it, it's important that you read the ksuba to the witnesses. They know what they're signing. So we usually read the ksuba to them, right? Because some of them can't read. It's not an easy document to read. It's in Aramaic. That's why you see the rabbis that read it under the chuppah, and sometimes they're breaking their teeth on it, because it's hard words. It's not such simple words, not regular words you read every day. It's not in Hebrew, it's in Aramaic. So therefore, not everybody can read these documents. You have to, they need, but how to signing on a document, they don't even know what's written in it. So you have to read it for them. Read it on what they're signing. And so you could be still a witness on something you cannot read, because somebody told you what it said. Somebody informed you what it said. So too, you can be a writer on a document even though you cannot sign it, because you know what it said and you're signing it through somebody else. What's the difference? So the Gemara, wow, 15 minutes, went over 15 minutes our time. Beautiful Gemara. It's really such nice Gemara, this, just to learn the laws, because these laws of documentation still apply till today, in the aspect of how do you sign a ksuba and a get and other documentation in the aspect of Jewish law. How do we sign documentation? Okay, so we'll stop over here. 9b2. And pleasure, Daddy, I missed you. I don't know if you want or not, but we're holding you over here in the Gemara 9b2, and we'll continue Mitchem next week. Be'ezrat Hashem.
All right, very good.
Have a great night, guys. Great learning with you guys.
Bye.
Bye.